The first question, Sabah, is what were your biggest challenges and frustrations before we started our work together?
I think my biggest challenge was purely around, first of all, the basic understanding of PCOS and just how much it can affect a woman's life. The information that was available through the GP just wasn't enough to help me. All I was offered was the contraceptive pill, which I didn't need at the time anyway, and was just going to bring an onslaught of its own side effects. So my biggest challenge was not being armed with enough information or the right information, because there is some information now floating around on social media, but everybody now considers themselves to be a hormone expert, and I don't trust that either. So I think when you're looking at words like cortisol face becoming a TikTok trend, it's time to work with a professional.
Yeah, it's so true and so scary. I think there's a statistic that about 70% of people turn to social media for medical advice, which is quite terrifying when anybody and everyone can say something, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And what did you enjoy most about working with me in helping you overcome your PCOS?
I think number one, it was very holistic. So if there was the surgeon that I was working with on my polyp removal to blood tests that I'd done with my regular doctor to looking at the supplements I'm already taking, it wasn't you coming in and being an isolated source of information. I was able to integrate all these health touch points I already had going in my life into your overall method. And then you were able to shine an extra light on what was missing. Okay, so let's look at the diet. Let's look at the basic understanding of PCOS. Let's look at your training and how is that impacting what you're doing. And I think that was very easy. So there was instantly something very digestible about it for someone like myself that is already worrying about a million other things when it comes to work, as we all are. It felt like a solution that was workable because it was integrating everything that was already there rather than being in isolation and then causing me to have to still seek out other places of help or other sources of help. It was like a very accessible solution, I think, and being able to bring all the things I was already doing together and then add on.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because our lives are so crazy busy. I think there's the perception that when you're managing your PCOS, it looks like what you see on social media, these perfect balanced plates and chopped salad bowls and extreme workouts. And it really puts health almost up on a pedestal of this is what it looks like. And it makes it unattainable for the everyday person. What is possible for you now that wasn't before?
I think the first thing is what we started with, which was the hunger scale. So it was a very autopilot thing for me, feeding myself and being quite robotic about when I was doing that, how I was doing that. And as somebody that I think when you've struggled with something like PCOS for a long time, it complicates the relationship with your own body and kind of severs you from it a little bit. I'm quite a heady person. I'm very much in the cognitive space a lot rather than in the bodily space, and connecting with hunger or even being aware that there was such a thing as a hunger scale and thinking actually that's a super interesting concept to begin with helps you to gauge and know yourself in a very different way. So that just feels a lot more intuitive for me as a baseline, which is great because that was something that just wasn't there before, which now is. And particularly with the fullness element and really being able to gauge how much fullness feels comfortable versus actually that's a bit uncomfortable. I didn't register that before as discomfort. I thought that was being satisfied with what I just eaten, but actually that was probably making me a little sluggish, and no wonder I was getting those afternoon energy crashes and wasn't able to fall asleep as soon because maybe at dinner I was overdoing it a little bit. And looking at it from a place that doesn't feel restrictive, it's more like respecting that my body just needed a little less than I thought it did. I thought because I felt so tired all the time and considered myself to be so busy, that equal more energy, more fuel needed, more food needed. It's not always the case. And then being able to respect how that changes across my cycle, knowing that, okay, this is my menstrual week. So I actually am clearly more hungry this week. That I know is hunger. It's not a craving and it's not something I should be depriving myself of. That's something I should be leaning into. So I think that's been a very key one for me. And also just the architecture of my plate, being able to understand what's present on it.
Yeah, and I love that. It's really there's so much work around respecting your body, about being more intuitive and listening to your body. And you mentioned that's really been the case with food, hunger, satiety. Do you think that has overflowed into other areas of your life? So the way that you move your body and exercise, the way that you rest and recharge and recuperate.
The notion of balance has definitely poured into other areas of my life, such as having a business and understanding that the first thing that should be sacrificed when things are getting busy at work shouldn't be my home cooked meals. It shouldn't be my workouts or my sleep. It should actually be the other way around. And you don't really understand that until you start respecting your body, that you were disrespecting it for a very long time because you were living in that feeling of pushing the body too much to the extreme that it starts to feel normal. So after coming out of those woods and having a good few months, and then that becomes half a year, then that becomes close to a full year of taking better care of yourself, you're able to gauge a distinct before and after. So now I can feel when I'm verging more close to burnout before it's too late and I actually burn out. I can sense in my body actually the headaches, which were so persistent before, and I don't get them as regularly anymore. When they start coming back, I know that I'm more stressed that week without needing to resort to other things. I'm like, okay, that is not no longer part of my norm. So the fact that it's creeping back in, that's my body trying to tell me something. What can I do? So 100% it filters into other parts of life.
Yeah, that's incredible. And Sabah, I know that you've alluded to it already. One of the things that you really struggled with was the balance. And I guess a little bit of the all or nothing mentality in that because you're a business owner, when you're running your business and things ramp up on that side, that takes priority. And that was a balance that you really struggled with before. Whereas now you've launched a new product and you've really maintained that balance so beautifully. What do you think has enabled that? What's enabled you to make that change?
I think it's been a very long time coming, and I think it's been different pieces of a puzzle. So, my work with you was part of that. My work in my fitness journey was a part of that. But I think I spent a lot of time training last year and being very dedicated to my training. It wasn't until I really started making more conscious choices with food that I was able to see actual change. I know with PCOS, and one of my goals was obviously weight loss, as a lot of women get told that when your PCOS symptoms are flaring up, that you need to lose weight. And obviously, it's difficult to lose weight because the PCOS is making you gain it, but it's also making it very hard to lose. And I think it was also knowing my body and being able to trust my body. So once we'd done our phase of work together, I was then able to trust that I could make decisions around food and around fueling my body without necessarily being told them by someone else. It gave me a bit more freedom to experiment and think, actually, let me see how I feel when I'm looking at carbs in a certain different way and monitoring that around when am I moving most in the day, when am I then super sedentary. And that made a big difference. For me, the weight on the scale was not budging. It was just so stubborn, it wouldn't budge until I then was able to make those kind of intuitive changes. But that was only after our foundation of work. One of the biggest changes that you made in my routine was I would do these weight sessions, which are quite intense because you've seen my training program. And then I wouldn't be eating lunch until 12, but I was done with the gym by about 9:30, 10. And then realizing why I was so tired and so hungry still after lunch because I was waiting to refuel. Just that little post-workout refuel and knowing that it's either a shake or it's my Greek yogurt or whatever it is. It sounds very simple, and maybe to other people it's so obvious. To me, it wasn't, but that has dramatically changed how good I feel after my workout, how good the rest of the afternoon feels, and then how well I can train the next day because I don't feel like I'm constantly running on empty. I really felt like I was running on empty all the time, and I just couldn't catch my breath. And I think the biggest thing that working with you gave me was a bit of space, a lot of sanity. I'm very skeptical of a lot of the rhetoric on social media when it comes to PCOS and weight loss for women and nutrition for women. But it felt like I'd really found somebody that I could trust and that had a lot of empathy for the clients that you're working with and understanding how emotional all of this is. We're literally talking about the way you look, the way you feel you look when you look in the mirror. It's very vulnerable, and I think you hold a lot of space, not to quote the viral Wicked press tour. I know that's like the phrase that we shouldn't be using, but you really held space for me in a super vulnerable time. I had just come off of a surgery for a polyp removal and was looking to make changes that felt very scary. I wanted to lose weight, but it's also hard to let go of your emotional eating habits at the same time. So you lead with a lot of compassion, and I think that's made me more compassionate towards myself.
Oh, I love that. And thank you for trusting in the process because it is scary. And yeah, like you say, it's such a pull if I want to lose weight, but I also want to work on my relationship with food. And yeah, handing your trust over to someone else to help you recreate that pathway, to recreate the narrative is really scary. So thank you for trusting me. Last question. What would you say to someone who is thinking about working with me but is not 100% sure?
I think that with myself, I did a lot of research. There were a few practitioners that I was looking into, and I just booked an intro call with you. My advice would be book that intro call because you don't lose anything from it, but to just further educate yourself on who you're about to possibly work with. And I'm biased because I've worked with you and it gave me a lot of knowledge, a lot of practical tips that have positively impacted my life. So I would sway you towards deciding yes on that one. But to try and remain objective, I would say that it was first and foremost your qualifications that made me want to work with you. But then after speaking with you personally, I thought, okay, I'm definitely speaking to somebody who knows their stuff. They have the right qualifications and is specifying in PCOS because that was really what I wanted to work with you. Otherwise, there are other dietitians that you can speak to, but as a woman with PCOS, I feel that your advice is super catered to a very specific condition, which a lot of people don't understand. For context, my GP just told me that it was impossible for a woman with PCOS to eat carbs at every meal and that I need to lose weight and will get the polyp removed, which was great. She then referred me to a surgeon. I got the polyp removed, but that didn't really help me. If it wasn't for you, I would have been on my own doing God knows what with TikTok nutrition videos and following, I don't know what Pilates princess trend is working this week. But we worked a lot on not just the nutritional aspect, but also fitness. And you always took into account what I enjoyed, whether that was through workouts, whether that was through a taste perspective, through food. I was never having to sacrifice on eating things that tasted great or doing workouts that I liked or that I preferred. And it worked for someone that is busy and that really needed support. So I would say go for it.